I was raped by my mom best friend story time. Okay, so boom. I'm a 14-year-old boy who lives with my mom, and unfortunately my dad passed away. He was serving our country, and now my mom is a single mother. Now my mom kind of sucks as a mom. She really doesn't pay attention to me. She neglects me and leaves me home alone a lot while she goes out doing whatever. And she's usually out with her best friend who I knew since I was 10 years old. So my mom best friend is a man, and I actually thought my mom and him would end up together before he violated me and took advantage of me. One day my mom was out once again doing God knows what. He came over. And yes, of course he has his own keys because literally no boundaries were set by my mom. Well, I was in the living room watching a movie and he sat next to me and said, "Your mom's not gonna be back till way later." I said, okay, confused as to why he was telling me that, and said, "Thank you." Then he started rubbing on my thighs. Like, my mom best friend raped me story time part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, he started rubbing on my thighs. And you know how people who are dating or into each other kind of start off slow until things progress and gets freaky? Yeah, he didn't do that, and he also didn't show no mercy. He rubbed on my thighs, and when I asked him what he was doing, he got on top of me and held me down with his strength. Then he started kissing me. I started crying, saying please stop and trying to fight back, but I couldn't get him off. He was a pretty big guy. Let me remind you guys that I am a 14-year-old little boy, and I'm pretty small for my age. He then undressed me and completely once again took advantage of me and violated me. He then threatened me and told me if I told anyone that he would hurt me. What happens next is heartbreaking. Like and follow for part. My mom's boyfriend raped me story time part 3. Okay, so boom, like I said, after he violated me and took advantage of me, he then threatened me saying if I told anyone he would hurt me. I cried and cried all day until my mom got home. She heard me crying, came to my room and asked me what happened. But in fear of my mom's boyfriend hurting me again, I just cried and said nothing. My mom then seen blood and took a closer look at me. She seen that I was bleeding from my behind because again, I am a 14-year-old boy who was raped by my mom's boyfriend. She took me to the hospital because I wouldn't tell her anything and just continued to cry. As the doctors took care of me, they were able to determine that I was violated. Till this day, I don't know how they knew, but all my mom did was ask me who was it. My mom in tears actually shocked me because like I said, my mom kind of sucked. She didn't pay attention to me much and left me home alone a lot. But she made me feel like she cared, so I decided to tell her like my mom's boyfriend raped me story time part 4. Okay, so boom, like I said, I decided to tell my mom because I felt like she cared. Once I told her, something changed in her. She went to the cops immediately, and when my mom seen him, she slapped him so hard the police had to calm her down. She was in so much anger. He's in jail now and he's never coming out. I'll never have to see him again. My mom fought so hard for me in court, and now years later our relationship is close and unbreakable. My mom apologized for even being absent around me at that time. She even apologized for not being home when he did the act, but she couldn't have known. I'm grateful for my relationship with my mom now, and I love my life. I'm happy and refusing to let him take my joy away. Stay safe.
Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I had been married for 7 years. 3 years into the marriage, he started sleeping on the couch. We would constantly fight back then because of several things. Number 1, I knew he was cheating on me, but he would never admit to it. Number 2, I wanted to have children, but he didn't want to at the time. Number 3, he never wanted to spend time with me and always prioritized his friends. And this was around the time that he started getting physically violent. Because we'd already been married for a few years at that point, I never saw him as a violent person. It all started by him shoving me one time during an argument. But he shoved me so hard I fell to the ground and ended up bruising my chin. And even though this was a big problem between me and him, it became an even bigger problem between me and my family. As soon as my parents saw the bruise, they started accusing him of beating me. And of course, my first instinct was to defend my husband. My parents begged me to stay with them and I didn't. I went back to my husband and demanded an apology, but he wouldn't even look me in the face. He told me he basically did not care. Once he started sleeping on the couch, it was just like we were roommates. We stayed like this for years. Anytime we got into an argument, he would just look for something to throw at me. One day he threw a jewelry box at me and I ended up in the ER. And of course, the hospital thought it was my husband. So I lied and said that I tripped. And unfortunately, I went straight back to my husband. Part 2 is story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After years of him pushing me, shoving me, throwing things at me, and even slapping me, I became so numb to it. It would get me really angry and upset at the moment, but as soon as he would apologize, we would just go back to normal. But even our normal wasn't normal. We didn't sleep in the same bed. He was never really home, and when he was always playing video games. This was also around the time that he lost his job, so for 5 years, I was basically the breadwinner. He told me he didn't want to get a job and he wanted to play video games. I didn't tell him anything because I didn't want it to turn into a fight, but I was angry at the thought that I had to now support him. But like I said, my parents did not like him at all. They knew something was up because I always had some sort of bruise. My parents made it a habit of showing up unannounced to our house. I was actually really grateful to my parents. This didn't upset me at all. But my husband, on the other hand, hated my parents. One day he asked me, why do they even care about you so much? You're not that important. Around a year ago, I started feeling really sick all the time. At the time, I didn't know why. One day, I walk into the kitchen and see my husband holding eye drops in his hand, but he quickly put it away. I asked him why he was holding that, and he said nothing, mind your own business. So I did. A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a coworker, and he told me a story about somebody using eye drops on someone else to make them sick. This is when it all clicked. I had all these weird stomach issues, and I never realized that it was him putting eye drops in my coffee. This is when I decided to file for divorce. Instead of filing for divorce and leaving him, I went home and told him that I was going to get a divorce. He grabbed a hammer and started chasing me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Part 3 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. When I saw him grab the hammer, I started instantly running. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself. The good thing is that he would never damage this house because he does love it, so he didn't swing at the door. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour explaining to him why I wanted to get a divorce. After the 2 hours, I thought he had calmed down. He basically told me that he would give me the divorce with no problem. But let me remind you, I was the breadwinner and he had no job. He was completely dependent on me. But as soon as I opened the door, he pushed in and started hitting me. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone in my family what my plan was. Suddenly, I wake up and I realize I'm on the ground. 4 hours had passed. I get up and look at myself in the mirror, and my face was completely swollen. I walk into the living room and my husband was there playing video games, just like he did every day all day. As soon as he sees me, he says, "You better go wash your face." Instead, I grabbed my things and ran out. He didn't even bother chasing me. I called my parents on the way to the hospital and they met me there. Luckily, there was no major damage. My parents helped me file a police report, and when the police showed up to see my husband, he had cleaned the bathroom. Guess what he told them? That he was the one that wanted to divorce me because I was crazy, and that I had made up the whole attack. He says that I must have hit myself in the face. That's when the cops asked him, "How do you know that she was hit in the face?" Gotcha. He said he had assumed that I was being hit in the face. My brothers and parents went over and kicked him out. I sold the place and bought a house down the street from my parents. I am now so much happier. I feel like I'm aging backwards from not being around him. The constant feel and nervousness I felt around him took a toll on me, and I just hadn't realized it. To this day, he says he did nothing, and the cops have done nothing against him. I need proof, so what should I do?